Hey, what's up, Brew Crew? Opie here. Welcome back to the Brew City Garden. Hey, thanks again for joining me here today. I was just kind of cruising around the garden, taking a look at just everything and seeing how everything's coming along. And I'm really impressed with this back garden. So I thought, well, let's bring you guys with me and I'll just kind of show you what we've got going on back here, how we're maintaining it, and hopefully we'll get some nice harvest out of this really soon. So let's go talk about it. So one of the very first successes in the back garden this year has got to be the sunflowers. These are the Mammoth sunflowers. I'm not sure about Mammoth, but they sure are beautiful. And this is actually the first time I've ever grown sunflowers, so I'm really stoked to have some open blooms. I actually saw these the other night when I was out here hunting around after work, and I thought, oh man, that is so cool. And they are completely covered in ants, which makes me wonder if there isn't other pests on here, if they're not farming aphids. But I don't see any aphids, but for whatever reason the ants sure love these sunflowers. But whatever, it's cool. They don't seem to be doing any harm. Again, I'll keep an eye out for aphids. Whenever you see ants, check for aphids, because ants like to farm aphids. It's a really fascinating thing, but it's a real thing. So if you see a lot of ants, check for aphids. You may have an infestation. But man, look at these flowers. They're just beautiful. You know, when I grew up on my grandfather's farm, he grew sunflowers that, of course, I was a small child at the time, but to me, they seemed like they were 20 feet tall. They were just huge and great big round, and they would produce actual great big sunflower seeds every fall, and we would harvest those and feed them to the birds. So I don't think these are that variety whatsoever, but nonetheless, these things are beautiful. And I'm happy to say that the sweet corn so far is a great success as well. The germination rate on this was actually far better than what I expected. It's coming up nice and tall. They say knee high by the 4th of July. We weren't quite there. I think I was at about 12 inches or so at the 4th of July. This is mid-July, and you can see it's just, this stuff is blowing up. It's amazing. It's almost waist high, and it's mid-July. So I am definitely happy with how the sweet corn is turning out. Now, as I look around, I notice there is some skeletonization of the leaves. And this is about the time of year that Japanese beetles come out. So I've got a hunch that if I look through here, I'm going to find Japanese beetles. And sure enough, I think I'm looking at one right now. So that's a whole different video. That's a whole different subject. If you've ever dealt with Japanese beetles, you know how ferocious these things can be. They can absolutely devour your plants. So I will definitely be out here taking care of those. You cannot let Japanese beetles get going, because once they do, all their friends are going to come in and they will decimate your crops. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that. Otherwise, this corn is super healthy. I'm sure it's super resilient. So if I get those Japanese beetles out of here, we're going to be just fine. I will come through today and add a high nitrogen fertilizer again to this corn. And I added a high nitrogen fertilizer about 2 weeks ago. And as you can see, they are gobbling that stuff up and they are just loving it. I love the way this corn is turning out so far this year. So I want to go ahead and fertilize the corn again. And what I'm using is just a high nitrogen fertilizer. This is nothing more than the cheapest Vigoro brand lawn fertilizer that I could get. There's no weed and feed or anything like that. It's just a cheap lawn fertilizer. I believe it's 29% nitrogen. And this works great for corn because corn is such a nitrogen hog. Now I'm looking and I don't see any tassels beginning to form on this corn yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep using the high nitrogen fertilizer. When I see tassels, I will give them a dose of a balanced fertilizer just to kind of help those ears fill out. Hopefully, at least that's the idea. But as far as fertilizing this, I don't measure anything. I just grab a handful and just sprinkle it right along the edge of the corn rows themselves. And it's not very scientific, but so far it's working very well. So we're going to stick with it. It seems like you just can't give corn too much nitrogen. So about every 2 weeks now, I'm hitting it with a dose, Try not to step on them. I gotta step through them here. And yes, I have seen the Japanese beetles. So we definitely have to do something about those guys, because they will absolutely destroy my crop of sweet corn if I don't come in here and try to eliminate them. Now, there's really no way to get rid of Japanese beetles completely, but I can certainly knock them down, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. It's definitely getting thick in here, but I'm not complaining. You know, I had a few comments saying that my corn was probably too close together, but it seems like I had more comments saying that it's just fine. And some people actually plant their corn closer than what I have planted. And I've got my corn planted at about 4 to 5 inches apart, and rows are about 12 inches apart. So they don't seem to mind. Like I said, I keep pumping them with this nitrogen, and they're growing very well. So I definitely like what I see with the corn, and hopefully I'll have more sweet corn than I know what to do with here in just a few weeks. And of course, on this side of the garden is the garlic that I planted last fall, the music garlic. And I was so happy to get this stuff, but at the same time, I was super worried that it wasn't gonna make it over the winter because it got so cold. It was negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit over the winter. We had just some dangerously cold blasts come through. So I thought for sure that the garlic, I thought maybe a few would survive, but the majority would not. It's the opposite. The majority, in fact, I think all of my garlic survived and thrived. So I really like the way this stuff looks. Now we're getting very close to harvest time. The top, or the two bottom leaves, are almost completely dried up on most of these plants. So what we're probably looking at, and I'll go ahead and pull one now, see if I can get it out of here without breaking it off. Let's see what we got. That is definitely not a bad head of garlic. And I think this may be one of the smaller heads that are in here. I see some much larger stalks. So definitely not bad. It looks like that's got 3 or 4 cloves on it. Some nice large cloves. So definitely can use these in cooking or replant them this fall for a crop next summer. So, oh, that smells wonderful. I wish we had smell-o-vision. This stuff smells amazing. The garlic did really well this year when I expected it to completely die. So I'm so happy to see that. And of course down here is the yacon. It's not a very well-known plant, and I will kind of go over that as we harvest it again this year. It's a South American root crop that is native to the Andes Mountains, and it forms these large, almost sweet potato-like tubers, but they don't taste anything like a sweet potato. They're very crispy and very watery. They are in the sunchoke family, and they're also related to the Jerusalem artichoke. So they kind of have all the properties of their cousins locked into one plant. They're really, really interesting, and I'm really trying to get my stock of rhizomes built up for the yacon. So we're working on that this year. They look nice. They look healthy. These almost never get any pest pressure, so they're usually just set them and forget them in the garden. I just water them every once in a while if it's not raining, and they're fine. So, man, I just love the way this back garden is turning out this year. And as always, so I always put my used straw bales from the Brew City Garden into this back garden, and that's why everything here does so well and is so fertile. So it's just amazing. Really, I don't have to do anything to it. I don't have to water it. Really, I don't even have to fertilize it if I don't want to. I am fertilizing the corn because it's such a nitrogen hog, and it'll just help us out by adding fertilizer to it. So I will fertilize the corn, but all this other stuff I don't really fertilize. I'll put one little sprinkle in the springtime and just let it go. So overall, this back garden is amazing. I love it. All right, guys. Hey, thanks again for joining me back here in the back garden of the Brew City Garden. As you can see, everything is doing amazing. When you finish with your straw bale garden for the year, don't throw those bales out to the curb or, in the garbage or whatever you do with them. Put them in an in-ground garden. And I guarantee you're going to have the best, most fertile garden you've ever grown. And you don't have to do anything with it. I just plant in it and it grows. It's just amazing. So to me, it's the best thing to do with your used straw bales. It just works out fantastic. Now, make sure you stay tuned because I am staring at a Japanese beetle right now and he's eating my sunflower, and you know what? That pisses me off. So we are definitely going to take care of those Japanese beetles. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to show you how I do it and how you can do it too. Other than that, that's all I got today, guys. I want you to have an awesome day, and until next time, we'll see you. Come here, you little bastard.